I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Videos back. I'm not sure why it cuts out, but technology. Okay. Hi guys, welcome back to Station 19 After Show. I'm one of your hosts, Linda Antwi. Obviously, we are self quarantining, so we're at home, but we love Station 19, so we had to keep the show going. And I'm joined by my lovely Tsahai. Hi, Tsahai.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's been a great week, right? But fortunately, this episode has been awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot. So let's just jump in. Something is about to happen, ... is the title. What were your overall thoughts, Tsahai?
It was great. I love seeing the teen talk to the therapist. I thought it was great to see them open up and resolve some of their issues from childhood that we got to heard of, or their past, in addition to the death of Rigo.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was surprised. I was surprised who they chose to meet with, and it wasn't the entire team. It was a select few, but it was our favorite few. And so the show opens up with the Rico Vasquez fund, and you see like some random firefighter putting money into the boot, and you see that there's going to be like a team meeting for the A team firefighters and what that looks like. And all of them have excuses, right? They're all type A personalities. They all have excuses. They don't want to go to this critical incident stress debriefing. B shift comes in and they're like, y'all need to get out of here, especially if Gibson is there.
They were so rude to Gibson, talking about they would slice him. I was like, oh, aggressive much?
Right,
Rude?
right, right. It was, yeah, and but the thing about that was it's the code, right? So that code transfers throughout the house, and I know that Jack is feeling guilt about it, and he talked about it in the session a little bit. But it's do you break the code? That was the thing. Do you break the code? And obviously, the firefighters feel like no, you never do.
Everybody can be judgy when they're not in that situation. We see that Andy is breaking a code of some sort. So are they gonna like do the same to her when when it comes out that she's dating Sullivan? So we'll see.
Right, right. Then we meet Diane. So Sullivan introduced Diane Lewis, the psychologist. She says she's here to talk about whatever they want to talk about. Um, she mentions how more firefighters have died from suicide than actual line of duty, and she's a firefighter herself. And what did you think of that first introduction? Because I know that character from watching 911, and
Right.
she's a great. I mean, and I know her from other things as well. But I also watch 911 right now, and I love her character on 911, and I loved her character here. What did you think of that whole introduction?
Love seeing her. We'll actually talk about her. Her name is Tracy. And we can gossip a little bit, but she was a great addition to this week's episode, and I hope to see her again.
Right, me too. And when she handed Jack at the end of the episode her card, I was like, ooh, that leaves the door open for her to come back. Yay. So she first meets with Jack, and she opened up so quickly. And this is the first time we hear that she herself was a firefighter. She's the one that jumped out of the planes and helped people. And she talks about the story about her losing a whole family and their dog Aldo because when she jumped out, I guess she hurt her knee and they had to rescue her instead of rescuing the family. She got 15 screws in her knee and like a metal plate in her knee. And she talked about how she had nightmares of hearing the dog barking and how the family, like that family, is no longer there because she couldn't do her job. And I thought that that was an interesting way to have a fast connection with these firefighters who, like I said earlier on, are type A and don't necessarily open up as easily. Did you think that that connected with Jack? Because I did. Because when she talked about that, and he opened out about having that family for a year, where it was the mom, the nuclear family, and then going from foster home to foster home until he had his firefighter family. I was like, oh, now I like it's full circle. Now I totally get Jack's picture. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I thought it was great the way she used her own experience to get Jack to bond with her and to see him cry at the end. You know, it's already hard for men to cry, but I'm glad she gave him a safe space to do that and let his feelings out because as we found out, it's bigger than Eva. It has to do with his family, like you said, and the loss
Yeah.
of that. And he was actually sabotaging himself. So, you know, we normally don't hear from what the therapist has gone through, and I thought that was a great technique.
Yeah, agreed. Then we get into Diane and Andy, and Andy's like, "Yeah, I'm mad at Bishop. I'm mad at Sullivan. I'm mad at Jack. And I get that you're a smoke jumper, but I'm just mad." And she like Diane still finds a way to break through. She's like, "Oh, so you were a salsa dancer." Finds out that she was a state champion. Talks about sex appeal and all of that, and then Andy automatically assumes because she's got that guilt on her chest that she knows about Sullivan. She's like, "Who told you?" And that I'm sleeping with the battalion chief. And she's like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And they get into that whole thing. And what I thought was interesting about that their discussion was talking about love and what love is. And Andy says love, the way she loves him, it keeps her awake, it makes her feel electric. And Diane's like, well, that's not really what love looks like. And you could see how Andy was taken aback by that. What were your thoughts of that whole thing?
Yes, when she said, I wrote it down, love is electric when you combine it with rule breaking, intrigue, and danger, but real love is calming. I was like, ooh. And so it proved that, you know, this love that Andy is feeling right now is different from what she felt with Ryan and
Jack?
Jack, actually. Yeah, and in her previous relationships. This love, it has so many emotions behind it. It made me question, is this real? And I was really hoping it was. So now I'm like, we'll see what happens with these two.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. So we get that first flashback of Andy and Vasquez and her being scared of the raccoon. And it just showed me how far she's come as a firefighter. Did you get the same feeling?
Well, yeah, I thought it was so funny to see her vulnerable because even in the session with the therapist, she was trying to control the narrative. So to
Yes.
see her vulnerable and screaming, it was funny and cute at the same time. But I wondered why she acted like she barely knew Vasquez after that when they had such a bonding moment, and he was
Yeah, I
there.
agree. I agree. When she said I barely knew him, I thought it was very weird, like just really weird. Then we move on to Travis, the probie, and then Diane comes into the kitchen. So we see Travis there in the kitchen and he's finishing up B team's cooking. And he sends the probie away and he's basically like, I have no respect for him, the probie. He's in the closet. He is being weighed down by his dad. He calls him quote unquote the pet rabbit, who was bullied into working here. He panics under stress. Like he had a list of things that he was talking about. And then Dan was able to turn it around and say, well, why, like basically why are you so mad at him, and what was your coming out like, because you're one of the very few firefighters who are out in public. You're brave, and you're braver than most. And she talks about coming out to his dad, and we saw in flashbacks a few episodes ago what that looked like and how his dad actually didn't accept him his whole life, even up until his wedding where he didn't show up. What did you think?
I thought it was really interesting to see how much anger he had toward the new probie Emmet. I didn't realize he had all that built up frustration towards him. Also, Travis was a wrestler, and how good he looked in that that Halloween costume was so funny. So we learned like a lot of high school information about some of the characters, with Andy being a salsa dancer and now Travis being a wrestler. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to bring that back up in the flashback where, like you said, we saw him break into that family's home where the man was beating his wife and rescue the wife and learn that he was a wrestler and learn that he was in the process of coming out back then, and his whole hero story and how it's hard for him to acknowledge that he really has been a hero many times in his life. And when Diane says that he's brave and that he's a hero and how he can't accept that, I found that to be very, very interesting because I think it all stems back to his dad never accepting him for who he was.
Right. And yet he's also a hero for himself. Like, to even, unlike Emmett, who's still hiding, to even own up to how you really are with yourself. I think that's a big lesson for a lot of people. And I think that's what he would like Emmett to learn. But I loved how she was like, listen, you got to be easy with Emmett. He's still growing, he's still learning, he's not where you are. And you have to accept him for that.
1000%. Then we see Ben and Jackie. And I loved how he was like, "Yeah, you and I are the same, changing careers midstream. How many careers have you had?" She's like, "Well, only two, actually." And then they talk about the PRT team that he's created, how he was a surgeon and firefighter and all of that stuff. Talks about um, his wife and how how ch- uh, changing his life saved Rigo, right? So because he had the PRT team, because he's a surgeon, he was able to be there on scene and save Rigo's life. And then when Rigo got the blood clot, and he talked about how God laughed at him and how God rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked, and how that all related back to Miranda and her miscarriage, and how his wife is not Wiccan, so he's blaming himself. So we saw that he's blaming himself not only for Rico's death, but the death of his unborn child. We
Oh,
see
it broke my
that,
heart. I'm like, Ben, like, that had nothing to do with you. But I liked how she was connecting how Miranda's feelings could have uh, kind of influenced Ben's decision to even start the PR team. You know,
Mhm.
he thought it was all his grand idea, but really he was probably trying to make her feel comfortable with him risking his life as a firefighter. So I thought, the doctor's analysis was amazing with that. And then to see this flashback that they did with him, I was like, wow.
that flashback really hit me hard specifically. And without getting into too much of it, but when I very first moved to California and, being an immigrant and not having the same like racial divide as there is in America, I had bought a new car, and it was a convertible. And I took it out with my boyfriend at the time for the very first time. So there were no plates yet. Long story short, I had a hoodie on and I had the hood on and driving down the street, and same type of thing. Cop pulls me over and follows us, pulls us over, thinks it's like two black men in a car, and it extended from there. So when I saw Ben stopped by the cop and afterwards saying that like I'm a human being and you had me lying down at your feet, that whole thing, it really was a critical moment for me. And I feel very, to this day, I still feel very sad that these things happen in America. And I'm sure other places in the world, but America specifically. But I think that was
Yeah.
an important point for the writers to hit on, because it really shows who and what has shaped who Ben is.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people, may not understand that these are not just things that happen on TV shows. These are real life situations that happen to people every day around the world. I mean, I've never, when I saw him have to get out of his car and put his face on the floor, I I've never done that. And so I can only imagine how demeaning that feels. And then he, the cop was able to brush it off, hop in back inside his car and move on with his day. But Ben was left with this feeling, as we see years later, still resonates. And I agree that it was a great way for the writers to show this to the audience. And I love that.
Yeah, 1000%. Then we have Dean, Vic, and Jackie. So we see. I know he's your baby. I know he's your baby. We see them working out, and then Jackie wants to talk to one of them, and Dean's basically like, "Well, anything we talk about, we can talk about in front of it, right?" So the funny part is when he was like, "You see these guns? They don't grow on trees."
I was like, yes, Dean, thank you. I knew it. I was like, let me go. I mean, even big jump roping, I was like, fitness goals for both of them.
For real. So they talk about Pruitt. I liked how they talked about Pruitt, Enrique, who her name. What does it mean?
Oh, it means, I'll tell you because I wrote it down too. It means cherished one. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that too. So I loved how they brought the Nigerian culture in. I loved how he talked about his mom won't meet her because the baby out of wedlock, his life doesn't look like what they wanted. And then we talked about how if you know anything about Africans, you can be a lawyer, a doctor, engineer. And so he talked about how in his family, there's a doctor, there's a lawyer, there's a banker, and then there's a disappointment because he's a firefighter.
So sad.
Yeah. So then when he talked about shame on her, like shame on the mom for not meeting his beautiful, perfect daughter, I was like, okay, he's got a handle on what's going on here. What did you think?
I thought that was an interesting perspective. I thought he was going to feel shame for himself, but when he said, I don't feel shame, she should be ashamed, I thought that was really interesting. I think as someone whose parents are both immigrants as well, it's a narrative that extends to not only African traditions, but Caribbean and even Black American people at times. So no one wants to disappoint their parents, but the fact that he had to say to himself, listen, this happened. I'm dealing with it. I'm actually growing from it. And if you want to be a part of my life, I want you to. But if not, that's your loss.
And then what did you think about Jackie being in love with Vic after? Like, when she said, I've seen friends that are in love with their friends. Take your time. Because basically, if you shock her too quickly, it'll be a mess. I was like, so I called this like a few weeks ago.
I did, but at the same time, I'm trying to figure out, when did these feelings evolve? He was dealing with the AJ, the baby mama. He had the girl that his mom set him up with. So it's like, I wish we saw it like a little bit more along the lines, but I guess it wouldn't have been such a big reveal had we seen it more. But I was like, what? I know I mentioned it, but I didn't believe she was going to say it like that. And he did not deny it at all. I loved also how she said, listen, the reason you're trying to push her on Jackson is because you're in love with her. So I was like, ooh.
That's right.
And by the way, I've been worried about Maggie, and I did watch Grey's. So Maggie going to be all right. So this Vic and Dean situation, I'm totally here for it.
Okay. And another one to say about that, we saw a sneak peek because when we see Vic playing with the baby and Dean's in the back in the kitchen, and he's looking at the interaction, you see the love on that, right? And then
Yes.
we saw a little bit of it ago when we watched Grave, when they had the family dinner. And,
Yes.
yeah, and Vic brought Dean to the family dinner. Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
Jackson had been picking up on it, and in my mind, I was like, nah, they're still friends. Like, I didn't see Dean giving her googly eyes or anything, so I was still, I thought it was gonna happen, but I wasn't sold until this week, and now I'm like,
You called it. I'm giving you a high five already. So then we see Jack approach Dr. Lewis, and we see him say basically like, do you basically think this is my fault? Do you think I'm a bad guy? And she's like, I don't know you very well, but it's not your fault. He had embolism, he died, and he made his choices basically. But then we also saw him, or we also saw her open the window for him to come see her more. What did you think of that?
Who are we talking about again? I'm sorry.
Jack.
When he came back. Okay, Jack. The fact that he even wanted to go back and talk to her again. Jack is growing so much, and so the fact that he was like, no, just give it to me straight. I haven't figured out why I did this. Can you help me? And I appreciated her just really just blatantly saying what went on, and I thought that was really nice.
And then we see Maya and Jack, and how he feels like he's a horrible person, and how excuse me, it's not Jack, Dr. Lewis, and how she thinks she's a terrible person, how she talks about dying and thinking of dying every day. How death would set her free. And I liked how Dr. Lewis was able to show her that her life means more than what her dad said it was, where it's like, I word only.
Yeah, the fact that I didn't remember I said I didn't know what was really bothering Maya. We thought it was just the fact that everybody was mad at her for becoming the new chief. But really, she also felt guilty about putting Rigo and Jack together, which I found interesting. For her to reveal that she thinks about death, I was very surprised about that. But again, even stemming from last week, we see the theme of mental health and mental issues, being brought into the show, which I love.
Yeah. Agreed. And then in the last 100 seconds, we see Vasquez, closure. We see Strawberry and Travis try to deliver to Eva. And Eva, I don't want this. I don't want to be a widow. I don't want the food, and she slams the door. I want to see Jack go and deliver groceries for the fire victim, because it relates to her just being alone and like one standing. You see Ben go and play basketball and be like, I'm an old man, I see this. And then we see Maya and Dr. Lisa, and Maya switching it up and saying, this is one script, we don't do this, but like, let's do this. And we get to see Andy with Sullivan and the salsa dancing and that whole thing. What did you think of that? I was like, that's acting a whole lot last 100 seconds.
I mean, it was cute, the salsa dancing, but I just, he was all right. I was like, he's no like salsero, like an authentic salsa dancer, but he was doing his thing a little bit, so that was cute. And I'm really happy for Maya. I've been hard on her, but I'm happy that she has Dr. DeLuca to be there for her during this time and to show her that there's more to life than work.
Yeah, agree. I'm wondering what's with Travis and the Pro. The Pro showed up, knocking at the door, and they started making out. I was like, but you hate him.
Not that, there's a thin line between love and hate.
Girl. News and gossip.
Yes. So, just like us, the station member crew is under quarantine, but how are they spending their quarantine? Well, as I mentioned last week, their Doss, who plays Vic, had a birthday last week. and the cast held a super cute virtual birthday party for her. It even included a cake from Milk Bar, and some of our favorite cast members like Ryan was there, Travis was there, Emmet, who's the new Proby, was even there, Ben was there. So I thought that was really cute. And if you guys want to check that out, hit up Daniel Savra's IG page, D Savra, who Maya. So go over there to check that out. Also, a special shout out to Tracy Thomas, who played the doctor this week. She was a great addition to the show. Tracy's from Baltimore, Maryland, and she started doing theater at 9. So you, like you said, Linda, that you know her from 911, but she's also been in Grey's, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and she was in Rent the movie and on Broadway. So great job, Tracy, and hope to see you again.
That's awesome. Normally, I don't have to speak. All I will say is that if you have it in your heart to donate during these crazy times to a charity, please do that. And we love Station. We're going to be here next week. You guys can follow me on social media at Linda Tsahai.
You can find me in my house at Say Hi Tsahai.
Love it. Till next week, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.